Welcome to the Friday edition of Juan's World. I'm back in my kitchen. I'm going to be doing some more pasta sauces today, continuing my Father's Day gift to my son. And this one is going to be two basic sauces. One of them a garlic and oil sauce, and the second one a tomato sauce. And I'm going to ring some changes on both of them. Now, especially the second one could be made with or without meat. And it's what is called bolognese in the United States, but it's really not ragu bolognese. That I'm going to keep for another time, probably next week, after I've done a sort of rambling philosophizing thing on Tuesday, just to keep everything balanced, and then on Friday probably I'll do the ragu bolognese, which is kind of like the bolognese sauce in the United States and kind of not. And today I'm also going to be making pasta primavera after I make the oil and garlic. Also not an Italian dish. Pasta primavera comes from New York. A lot of what passes for Italian cooking in the United States is actually what we would call Italo-American. That is, it's a hybrid of what comes from Italy and what was born in the New World. So let's get started. So here I have my pan heating with about a quarter of a cup of extra virgin olive oil in it. As I said in my last video, I don't always saute with olive oil. There's quite a lot of dishes where I want the oil to be pretty much tasteless. But with these Italian sauces, I'm quite happy to have the olive oil flavor in the dish. Now this is just going to be the simplest sauce you could possibly imagine. In Italian it's called aglio e olio, which is a bit of a tongue twister. Aglio e olio is garlic and oil, and so obviously you want the olive oil because you want the taste of the olive oil. And I've chopped up my garlic, and you can see I've got it on very, very low heat, because all I want to do is just bring out the aromatics in the oil. I absolutely do not want the garlic to take on any color. I just want the flavors to suffuse, and it looks like it's a little bit too high even. So I'm going to turn it off and just let those flavors suffuse. And I'm going to cook my pasta next. I'm cooking some linguine, and I'm going to cook that next. So I'm just going to let this suffuse, probably for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes. Just let it all percolate into each other. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to cook my pasta, and then when it's done I'm going to drain it and put it into the oil and garlic sauce, which I will heat back up and then serve. That's it. Then I've got another trick up my sleeve that I want to show you after that. So let's get started on the linguine. So here's my linguine cooking away. I'm assuming that you know how to cook pasta, so I'm not going to dwell on this, just let you know that it's on its way, and cook it to the tenderness that you want. Al dente in Italy actually means quite a few different things. It can mean like barely cooked to having a bite. So cook it the way you want to, then we'll come back. So now we're going to finish off the dish, or at least one of the dishes, and then I'll show you the other one in a little while. The pasta's cooked, and all I'm going to do, you can drain it in a colander if you want to, but I'm just going to use tongs, and a little bit of the pasta water will be clinging to the pasta. That's okay. Just want it to all blend together, and very, very Italian to add a tablespoon or two of pasta water to your sauce, whatever it is. Now my olive oil and garlic has been gently heating, hardly at all, just enough for the garlic aroma to penetrate everything. Now you see what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to lightly toss the linguine in the oil and garlic, and then I'm going to serve. Now it's very hot right now, which is good, but I'm going to split it into two, and you'll see why in a few minutes. So first of all, I'm going to take half, put it in my nice Vietnamese bowl here. And that's about one meal for me. And I could add parsley, I'll admit. That would work. But what I'm going to do with this bowl is I'm going to add some cheese. I said in my last video that I don't normally eat pasta with cheese. Well, when it's a very, very plain sauce like this one, then I'll add some cheese to it. I could also add some flaked peppers if I wanted to. That would be all right. But what I'm going to do with the second bowl that I'm going to put together now is I'm going to put it in the refrigerator. And I'll show you what I'm going to do with that a little later. So as you can see, I did decide to add a little bit of parsley just to dress it up a little bit, and I've put some grated cheese from Parma, only cheese I can get in Cambodia to add to pasta. And that's going to be my lunch. And the second dish I'm going to put in the refrigerator, and I'm going to let it cool, and then I'm going to make a pasta primavera. So that's next. So pasta primavera is Italian for spring pasta, and you'd think it was an Italian dish, but it really isn't. It's actually made in New York. I'm not sure when, but in the 20th century sometime. And it's basically some kind of pasta cooked well and drained, and add olive oil and garlic like I have already done, chilled, and then you add vegetables. That's the primavera part, is that the vegetables are meant to be spring-like, like bring the joys of spring. Now some people add cooked vegetables, but I'm quite happy to just use raw vegetables, and so you see here I'm adding some cut up tomato, and when I'm adding tomato I take the seeds out. I just use the fleshy part, and then some mushrooms and some shallots, and I could add any number of things, avocado if I wanted to, chopped bell peppers, there's a whole host of vegetables that you would normally put in a salad that you can put with the pasta. And so you mix it all together, and then you can also add whatever other seasoning you like. And usually I add capers and a little bit of the caper vinegar, because that just gives a little perky flavor. So here's a different version that I made some years ago using a different kind of pasta. When you use linguine or spaghetti, it's very, very hard to toss. But if you use a smaller pasta like a fusilli, macaroni, tagliatelle, something like that, then you can toss everything together quite nicely, and the balance is up to you. So that's pasta primavera. Now let's move on to tomato sauce. All right, so now we can get started with the tomato sauce. And I'm going to make this with meat, but you can also do it without. And this is what in the United States is called bolognese sauce, but it's not ragu bolognese. But this is a basic tomato sauce with or without meat, starting with what we call the sofrito. Sofrito, I just learned, means lightly fried. So like the Spanish sobre means under, frito means fried, so sofrito. So I'm going to fry three things together. First we're going to start with carrots. And you see they're diced up really, really fine. One carrot. And then over here we have some equal amount of celery and shallots or onions, also an equal amount. You can make a lot of this and keep it in the freezer or the refrigerator if you want to, or you can make it each time individually, which is what I'm doing today because I don't really need a lot of sofrito. And then for the sauce, I'm going to use a big sauce pan, of course, and I've got some beef broth here. I've actually just made it with a beef stock cube. So let's get started with making the sofrito. Now the sofrito has to be done in the correct order, which is carrots first, then celery, then onions, because they have different times of cooking. Carrots take the longest to cook, and then the celery is next longest, and the onions the last. So I've got the carrots in about maybe a little under a quarter cup of olive oil on a very low heat. I don't want them to take on any color. I just want them to very gently fry, sofrito, and so we need a very low flame. I used to, back in the United States, I used to call this a battuto because I had a cookbook very long time ago called the Romagnoli's Table. Don't remember, but I think they did actually train in Italy, not sure, but they called the basic starting point battuto. And I just learned via some friends on Facebook that this is not battuto, this is sofrito. As I explained, this means slowly or gently fried. Battuto in Italian means beaten, and a battuto would be the same carrots, celery and onions beaten. Battuto means beaten with lard or bacon or some other fat, and then fried. So this is not battuto, this is sofrito. Okay, I'm going to let these simmer like this for about 5 minutes, and then I'll come back and add the celery. So the carrots are looking pretty good. The next step is to add the celery, And I want to just make another point here. In French, they use the word mise en place, which means put in place. And what it effectively means is that you should have everything ready before you start. You shouldn't be sauteing the carrots and then thinking, okay, I better cut up the celery next. It should all be cut up and ready and prepared ahead of time so that you can just tip it in and go from there. So in with the celery, and I'm going to take about another 5 minutes or so with the celery. Again on very low heat, sofrito, and I will come back. Now, one thing you might notice is that my pan is nice and big, and that means that I can push the ingredients around in pretty much only one layer. I want to have them all in direct contact with the heat rather than all piled up. Now finally, my shallots. Oh, you can use an onion. I use 2 shallots. It's up to you. Not going to take very long at all. And then I'm going to take all of this and put it in my stock pot. Now, what I would normally do, I would normally have the stock pot simmering, but because my induction burner makes a lot of noise, I'm going to dispense with that for the moment. But when the camera's off, I'm going to have the burner working away, because the next step is to put the sofrito into the stock, and then I'm going to fry up the beef that I bought. I'm going to brown it and add it, and then add the rest of my ingredients. But let me just finish off my sofrito, and I'll come back. And rule number 1, make sure that everything is softened, and the onions will tell you when they've been nice and softened, and everything else is then ready. So it's about, I would say in total, about 15 minutes. That's 5 minutes for the carrots by themselves, then another 5 minutes with the celery, then another 5 minutes with the onions or shallots. So you see my sofrito is all ready, and I'm now just going to put it into the broth. And I've heated the broth up. I don't have it actually simmering right now. Normally I would, but I'm not going to be taking too long to do this. So I'm just going to put this in here, and I'm going to start hand holding the camera, because otherwise you can't really see inside the pot, so you can't see what's going on. So let's just move down here. Okay, so here's the sofrito in the beef broth. Next step, I'm going to brown off the beef. Now, when it comes to browning beef, as I've shown you quite a few times before, you need to get your pan smoking hot and then turn out the beef into the pan. You can hear it sizzling, and you need to break it up immediately. All I have is the residue of the oil in the pan. It's enough for the beef. Just going to have to be worrying it around constantly and breaking it up. And the fortunate here that this beef, unlike a lot of beef that I get in Cambodia, doesn't have too much water in it. you can see that the little water that was in it is boiling off fairly quickly, and I'm going to let that boil off because I want to keep browning. Okay, the water is almost boiled off. Typically butchers add a small amount of water to the beef. Not quite sure why. It may have to do with preservation, I don't know. But anyway, you need to boil it off. The simplest solution by far to having ground meat with no water in it is to grind it yourself. But if you can't do that, then you just have to be prepared to get rid of the water in this fashion. You can see, I hope, that it's now starting to brown quite nicely. This is known as the Maillard reaction. It's an enzyme reaction that creates sugars. So it's very important as a component of the sauce. Just a minute longer, and then I'm going to put this in with the sofrito and the beef broth. So here's the beef added to the broth and the sofrito, and the last step I'm going to add about an equal quantity of canned and chopped up tomatoes, and then I'm going to season things. So let me get my tomatoes out, and I'm going to do that, and then I'll show you the final process. And then it's simmer, 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 like all day. So you see here I've now added the tomatoes, and I'm just going to add a few more ingredients. See here I've got some garlic which I've chopped up. I've got 3 cloves. I probably could add 1 or 2 more, but that'll get me started. And I've got some basil leaves. I would also use fresh oregano if I had it, but I don't, so I'm going to use powdered. And the main thing that I say over and over and over again is put it on the simmer, and then taste, 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 and then taste again. Keep tasting, keep adjusting your seasonings as you're simmering. Simmer for at least an hour, preferably 2 or 3, and then I'm going to store this overnight and come back tomorrow. I'll leave you with this image of the sauce simmering on the hob. Usually I leave a sauce like this simmering for maybe 3 or 4 hours, just like good Italian cooks that I learned from. They simmer all day and then serve in the evening. Or what I will usually do is simmer for the day and then put the sauce in the refrigerator, come back the next day and reheat it, and some enzymes have had a chance to do their work and to produce some sugars and various other enjoyable tastes. So meanwhile, if you like my videos, tell your friends, please like and subscribe, and I'll be back on Tuesday with some kind of rumination, not sure what, some sort of philosophical, theological ramble about something or other. And then maybe on Friday I'll consider ragu bolognese. Have a good weekend.